So I've been having a starting issue with the PT Cruiser lately. I'm pretty sure it's the ignition switch for a couple reasons. Whenever I turn my ignition over, the lights don't dim and it doesn't make any sound at all. If it was making some kind of sound, then I would assume it was either the battery or the starter, but it's not making any sound at all. I'll show you. There's absolutely nothing. So if you're trying to start your car and the lights are coming on whenever you turn the ignition and there's no sound at all whenever you try to start it, like no engine sounds, obviously there's the dinging, but if there's no sound of the car trying to start, then it's more than likely your ignition. Another reason I know it's my ignition is because I just replaced the starter and I just replaced the battery. So both of those are pretty much new. So the only other thing it could be would be the ignition. And I kind of tested it the other day. I got stranded and the car wouldn't start. So, I put the key in there and I turned it. I took all of this cowling stuff off and I hammered on the ignition while turning the car over, and it started up. So I know it's the ignition. I got the new part, and I'm going to show you how to change it out. Here's the tools that you'll need for this install: a ratchet with a 10mm bit, a flathead screwdriver, a Phillips head screwdriver, a Torx T20 screwdriver, and a Torx T10 security bit. That's all it is. Just unplugs, plug it back in. So before we get this started, I'm gonna unplug the battery, just in case. Anytime you're working with the steering wheel and there's an airbag involved, it's always a good idea to just unplug the battery. To unplug the battery, you need to take the airbox off first. We're just going to be unplugging the negative terminal. The first thing you're going to want to do is just give this here a yank. It's just held on by these little clips here. You just pull on it, let it sit down. There are 2 Phillips head screws. Once you have the screws out, this just pops right off. There's just this clip here that you need to undo. Screwdriver works fine. And there's that. And down here, there's a little button that you need to depress. And then you can just pull the lock cylinder right out. There's your lock cylinder. We'll just set this off to the side for now. Alright. So over here you're going to need a Torx T20 screwdriver. There's just 2 right up on top here that you need. For this next part here, you're going to need a T10 security bit. It's basically a Torx with a hole in the middle. You're going to need this for this one right here. So we're just going to go ahead and take that off there. Alright, next you're going to want to take this little retainer off. There are again 2 more Torx security screws. They're also T10s. When you take this off, there's a little spring in here. Make sure you don't lose that. That spring's going to need to go back in the exact same spot it was. Now we can just drop this whole thing out here. Alright, so I just snapped the new piece back into there. I believe this one is from a newer model because it does not have the original one. It doesn't have this extra piece here. Whenever you slide this out, be careful because it should be in there pretty good. Just try not to break anything. You know how earlier I said to be careful whenever you're pulling the switch off of the actuator here? So this part of the actuator switch here broke whenever I pulled it out of the ignition switch. So I went and got a new one of these, and while I was there I figured I might as well get the actual ignition switch, the one that looks like the one that came out of the car. And now we're just going to reinstall it the same way we took it out. Alright, a good thing to do once you're holding this up here is to just throw the top back in, make sure everything lines up properly. Seems to be good, so now we're going to go ahead and put this back on. Remember what I said about this spring here? Make sure it's lined up properly. As you can see there, that spring needs to go around that little metal piece coming down. And whenever you're screwing everything back in, make sure you don't over tighten it because you can strip the threads pretty easily with these. By the way, if you guys don't have a ratcheting screwdriver, it's come in really handy. Now we're going to go back over here and put this Torx back in. Next, we're going to put this back on. I think while I have this open, I'm just going to clean it up a little bit. Get some of this grime out of here. Next, we're going to put back the lock cylinder. Make sure everything is lined up properly. Make sure you can take the key out. Everything turns fine. I just have to plug this back in. Right, like that. Plug the battery in and see if it starts. Alright, so everything's back together. The battery's plugged back in. The airbox is put back. Everything here's put back. I just don't have all of the plastic shrouds back yet. So let's give her a start and see what it does. There we go. So that there is how you replace the ignition switch. Hopefully this how-to is better than some of my other ones. I know they weren't the best, but I tried to make this one more step-by-step. Tried to show you exactly what you had to do and the tools that you needed. And yeah, hopefully this helped you out. Hopefully you were able to fix any problems that you had. Thank you for watching. Good setup.